What's up, guys? This is Will Sports, and today I'm going to be talking about week 2 of the college football season. So, there was obviously a lot that happened yesterday, some big games, some big moments, and I'm going to talk about some of those moments, some of those uh, game changing, season altering type of moments that happened yesterday. So, first off, obviously, the big game of the weekend was Texas and Alabama. Number 11 Texas, number 3 Alabama. This was a huge game for both teams as Texas is a team that came into the season with a lot of hype. A lot of people felt like this year's roster was the best it had been in years, and that this team could really compete for not just a Big 12 championship, but a national championship. And they went out there and showed that they're capable. And Bama, obviously, a team that a lot of people have doubted, but still a team that people have trust in because of the type of sustainability that Nick Saban has built at Alabama. So you have to trust that they'll be able to keep it going. Well, some of the concerns that we saw coming into the preseason with Alabama, we saw show itself on the field. Jalen Milroe, he showed flashes, but his problem in this game was that he would keep evading the pocket very quickly. He was running directly into rushers. He wasn't reading the field the right way a lot of different times, and he was just looking to run first instead of being a pass first guy. And as a quarterback, obviously your job is to get the ball to your receivers, so you want to be a pass first type of guy. Well, that was the problem I was seeing with him. He was only 14 for 27. He had 255 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, and he rushed 15 times for 44 yards. Some of those are like plays he got sacked, but yeah, I mean, he showed that he has the ability to make certain plays and be a good quarterback. I mean, he had a possession there where he did stay in the pocket, and he did continuously he stayed in the pocket and he was making the right reads and he was accurate. But then there was just random moments throughout the game where he wasn't like that, and majority of the game actually he was like that. And Alabama's offense was stagnant most of the way until they kind of caught fire, mid third quarter. But Texas, definitely did a great job of, with their game plan. Quinn Ewers was amazing. His arm talent was on full display, and the NFL scouts, I'm sure, were just drooling over the things they were seeing from him. He was very impressive. He had that one deep ball throw when it was tied at 3 that put Texas up by a touchdown. I was just like, that's amazing. I mean, that is a throw that you don't see from a lot of guys, and his arm talent was just crazy. And also his poise, he was under control. He didn't let anything rattle him. He didn't seem rattled by the crowd noise, by Alabama's defensive line, which is very stout and probably the best part of their team this season. And you picked a part of Bama defense that I think is going to be really good. But the Bama's back end was definitely looked a little suspect, but that defensive line is no joke. And Quinn Ewers, when was getting the ball out to his receivers, you had 3 receivers go over 70 yards. You had Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, and Javion Sanders. So it was a pretty Jatavion Sanders, my fault. It was a good game by this offense, and like I said, it was a low scoring game for the most part. It kind of randomly changed like mid third quarter. Both teams were barely moving the ball or scoring, and then mid third quarter both teams just exploded, and there was a lot of fireworks, and the crowd got into it. But yeah, Texas went out there and handled their business, and I was not a team person that was on the hype train for Texas, because we've done this before where we hype Texas up and they don't live up to expectations. Well, they went out there and won the big game at Alabama, and so now I'm fully on that Texas train. Now, obviously, they still have work to do. There's still a whole season ahead of them, and there's still a lot of teams in that Big 12 conference that could potentially upset them, because Texas has lost to a lot of these teams before: TCU, Baylor, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State. There's a lot of teams in that conference that they could possibly lose to. So I think it's very important for Texas to remain composed, and for Steve Sarkisian to keep this team locked in and not getting too above their heads. They need to stay focused on each and every game ahead of them, one by one, and not trying to look in this broad sense of, okay, if we go 12-0, just focus on going 1-0 the next week. I think that is something that's huge for Texas specifically, because they have been a team over the years that has lost games that they shouldn't. So the talent showed, and I was very impressed. I was even impressed with a lot of their defensive schemes and what they were doing on that side of the ball. I know late, Alabama kind of caught fire, but most of that game, they had Bama's offense locked up. But Bama just has so much talent on the offensive end that it's hard to completely contain it and stop it forever. And also, when you have a quarterback who's like Jalen Milroe, his passing game is, suspect at times, but he's still a quarterback that can run and be very mobile, and that is not easy to defend. So I think Texas did a great job and a huge win for that program, and they look like the real deal. Let's move on. Colorado. This was another big story as Deion Sanders and his Colorado Buffaloes moved to 2-0. They were playing rival Nebraska and just completely took them apart. This game was pretty close early, and Nebraska honestly wasn't playing bad. But the real thing that hurt Nebraska, I don't even think it was necessarily Colorado. Colorado, obviously, as the game progressed, kept playing better and better and just kind of piled it on. But Nebraska was shooting themselves in the foot, specifically their quarterback, Jeff Sims. He was playing really bad football, was not taking care of the football. He had 2 fumbles, an interception. He looked out of sorts. He was inaccurate. I mean, you had everyone saying he should just be benched. But I don't know what Nebraska's quarterback situation is looking like in terms of their backups. So maybe the backups just aren't any better. And Matt Rule is just like, I'm just going to have to stick with Sims. I'm going to have to stick it out. But that was ultimately a huge part in why Colorado was able to gain separation. And then once they gained a little bit of separation, Colorado just took off. Shedeur Sanders was amazing. 31-42, 391 yards, 2 touchdowns. Another great game from him. You had another breakout receiver in Xavier Weaver who went for 170 yards and a touchdown. Add that to the list of great skill players they have in Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn and Dylan Edwards. Like, this was a great performance from this team, and they won in sort of in a different way than they did against TCU, because their defense was it was a defensive game for most of the way until Colorado kind of got their offense really going and kind of gained a rhythm. But it was a defensive game, and they were still winning, and they were making some big defensive plays. Their offense was not perfect storm like it was against TCU, but they were able to gain some rhythm, get going, and the confidence just ensued, and the crowd got into the game, and Colorado took off. And I'm very impressed with what I've seen. I know people like to sit here and belittle the wins because TCU and Nebraska apparently aren't good teams now. Well, before the season, tell me how many people really thought they were going to go 2-0 in those games, and let alone be dominant in one of them. No one thought that, okay? No one thought Colorado was going to come out here and play this type of football. So I think we have to give them so much credit. Shedeur Sanders has been pretty much perfect through 2 weeks of football, and I think the hype is warranted up to this point just because they've overachieved. They've exceeded the expectations we have for them. You had people saying this team wasn't going to win 4 or 5 games. And I mean, I think now everyone thinks they're locked to win 4 or 5 games. They're going to win their 3rd next week against Colorado State. You have several games in the Pac-12 that they should win, like Stanford and Arizona State. They should win those games. So Colorado has made a name for themselves in these 2 weeks, and they deserve credit because, like I said, no one was giving them this type of no one thought they were going to be able to beat TCU and Nebraska. Nobody did, especially TCU. So the fact that they've done that, we can't belittle it now and say, oh, well, TCU and Nebraska aren't good. No, give Colorado the credit because they play great football. Deion has been a damn good coach and has gotten that team ready. He's going to keep having them ready. And the hype has been around them. I mean, they've had, the media following them around. They're the media darling right now. And, I get it. Deion's a big story. We're all interested in what Deion's building there. But there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. And they've lived up to it so far. So, got to give Colorado credit. Like I said, they played great. Nebraska, another just terrible performance. 4 turnovers by them. They actually ran the ball pretty well, and but it didn't seem to matter as obviously got beat 36-14. So interesting game right there. Let's move on. I want to talk about Miami. Because this was something that was very intriguing to me yesterday. They went out and they dominated Tech. Well, they didn't dominate, But they put on an offensive clinic against Texas A&M. They won that game 48 to 33. Tyler Van Dyke, their returning quarterback, he was 21 to 30, 374 yards, 5 touchdowns. He's amazing. And he's exactly what Miami's been lacking at the quarterback. Someone who's accurate, someone who can run the offense and be composed and just get his receivers in the right spots and be kind of like a head coach on the field. He's just a great thrower of the football, and Miami has needed a guy like this, and I think this is a huge difference for this team this year. Now, I don't want to overreact and say Miami's back and Miami's going to be a playoff contender and win the ACC. But they look improved for sure. From last year to this year, they look much improved. That offensive line is really good. And Mario Cristobal, it's like you can tell he's starting to get his guys in there because that offensive line, it feels like a Miami type of, a Cristobal type of team that's going to lean in their offensive line to be really good, be great in the trenches. Their defense obviously was not great as they gave up 33 points. They allowed a lot of yards to A&M, but the offense, the defense still got them back into the game with some of the stops they were getting because Texas A&M early in that game was in control, but their defense made some big stops, and as the game progressed, it got better and better. But Miami, what they did offensively, you got to be impressed. 8.4 yards per play for them, and they forced 3 turnovers for A&M. And I just think that the crowd got into the game, and it was an atmosphere that you have not been seeing at Miami a lot. Miami in like 2018, I think that was the last year that they were like really good or had a good team. That was the last time the Miami crowd seemed the atmosphere and Hard Rock seemed that type of hype. It was cool to see because Miami, the home games are dead now because they have not been good. But you saw the crowd like get around this team and wrap their arms around this team when they were playing really good and kind of started to gain some separation from A&M. And that's something that you really want to see from this program because it's been down for so long. But Cristobal did a great job. The play calling in that game was really good. And like I said, the offense just looked very explosive. The passing game gave me a lot to be excited for this Miami team. Now, their schedule is very soft until they play UNC in about 4 to 5 weeks. So they could realistically be like a 5-0, 6-0, 7-0 type of team. And, if they take care of business. Now, there's some games in there where they're not, obviously Miami's the more talented team, but if, they should be able to win. But Miami is a program, just like how I said with Texas, they don't always play to the level they need to beat teams they should. They play down to their competition a lot. So we'll see how that goes. But I was very impressed with Miami. I think that offense showed a lot of promise and they look good. And maybe Miami could be a threat in the ACC this year. We'll see. Next, I want to move on. I want to talk about Notre Dame. They went on the road to beat NC State. This game got paused, I think mid-second quarter because of a rain delay. A lot of games on the Atlantic Coast got either moved to a different time or like had a delay because of weather, really bad weather on the coast this weekend. So that obviously could a lot of times stops a team from having a rhythm, can mess up a team's rhythm, whatever. But it seemed like it made Notre Dame just play significantly better because before that, their offense wasn't playing stout football. They I think that it was like 7-0 or something like that, or 3-0. It was 3-0. The offense was kind of slow to start the game, and NC State's defense was doing a pretty good job. But after that, Notre Dame's offense just exploded. And this is an NC State team that hadn't allowed over 30 points in a game in a few years. They had the longest streak of not allowing an opponent to score 30 points. So this is a good NC State defense, and Notre Dame just took them apart. They were balanced. They had 456 total yards, 7.5 yards per play, 286 through the air, 170 on the ground. Sam Hartman played great. Audric Estime had another great showing. And their offensive line, very physical as usual with Notre Dame, held up pretty well. And Sam Hartman just had as much time as he needed to make things happen. And Notre Dame just, they faced some adversity in this game. They had like a fumble by Sam Hartman in the third quarter, and NC State had a chance to tie the game. but the Notre Dame's defense held them to a field goal that they didn't convert. And then after that, Notre Dame took off. They didn't look back, and their defense was locked in. And I liked what I saw at Notre Dame. And Marcus Freeman was a coach that last year was receiving a lot of heat because they lost some games early that they shouldn't have. But they turned the season around. They went 8-4 last year, 9-4 with the bowl win. So they ended up having a pretty solid season, but I just felt like people were so critical of Marcus Freeman because it was a step down from how they were playing with Brian Kelly. Well, this year, this Notre Dame team so far looks better than any Brian Kelly team to me. I think they have more potential than any Brian Kelly team because of Sam Hartman and what he can do at the quarterback position. He's not going to get rattled, and he's a guy that can make all the throws. And this is an offense that, I don't know how explosive it's going to be. It looked good yesterday, but do they have enough big play guys? That will be interesting. Audric Estime has been terrific. He's looked great. Maybe he's going to be that guy. Maybe Holden Stays, who had 115 yards through the air yesterday. We'll see, but I think that this team, that is what I want to see with Notre Dame. I think as far as in the trenches, they're going to be able to hold up. Can they get enough explosive plays for their offense? Sam Hartman's a great thrower to football, so that gives me cause to feel good about this team. And Marcus Freeman, defensive-minded guy, so I'm not really concerned about the defense. The defenses look good for the most part. So yeah, I think Notre Dame was their first real test of the season on the road in a tough environment. Then you had a delay in the middle, and for them to come out and be as impressive as they were, I think Notre Dame right now looks pretty good. And when they play Ohio State in a few weeks, I'm not impressed with Ohio State right now. So I think they'll beat Ohio State. I think they can beat USC because even though USC's offense is amazing, I still have concerns about them up front. And when they play a team like Notre Dame who's really good up front, can they handle that? That is, Caleb's obviously going to make USC a tough out for anybody, but can they hold up on the line and up front? That is something I'm concerned about when it comes to playing USC. And Clemson was supposed to be a game that was supposed to be tough. The way Clemson's looked, I think they should win that game easily. So Notre Dame right now in a good spot. I like what I've seen. Impressive. And then the last few things I want to talk about, these are conferences. So the Pac-12, amazing start to the season. They have 8 teams ranked. 8 out of their 12 teams are in the top 25 now. After yesterday, I think they are 19-3 on the season. I think I don't have that off the top of my head, but it was something like that. Really good though. And they have a numerous amount of Power 5 wins now. Their record kind of took a hit last night as Arizona State and Arizona and Cal all lost their non-conference games, and Stanford lost to USC, but that doesn't count as a non-conference game. So, but USC looked great. Utah was able to come back from behind against Baylor without Cam Rising and win there on the road. You had Oregon go on the road, also coming back from behind to beat Texas Tech in a tough environment. Washington took care of business against Tulsa. Oregon State dominated UC Davis. Washington State got a major win over a top 25 Wisconsin team. I picked that game, by the way. That was one of my upset picks of the week. Cam Ward and that offense looked really good. The environment was great. Watching Oregon State and Washington State play the way they've been playing, it's a damn shame they have to go to the Mountain West. But yeah, those teams won. UCLA, dominant win at San Diego State. Dante Moore is their guy for sure. Who am I missing? I think I talked Colorado, obviously. Nebraska, I touched on them. But the conference looks amazing. And you got to give all these programs credit for how they play. I'm really confused as to why it took the league splitting up for these teams to finally start playing at the level that they need to be playing for them to even be a conference still. If the Pac-12 had been playing like this 2-3 years ago, I don't know if all this realignment happens, but part of the problem with them has been that they've been lacking on the field. Well, this year it looks like the Pac-12 is the best conference in the country. The SEC has been the unanimous best conference in the country for years now, but the SEC this year has not looked as good. They are 3-6 against the Power 5. And they got a few wins last night against the Pac-12, so that helped their case. But you have A&M who lost to Miami, South Carolina who lost to North Carolina, Florida State beat down LSU, Florida lost at Utah. Now Alabama loses to Texas. A lot of the big games that the SEC is playing in, they have not won, and they haven't looked good in. And I think that is something to be concerned about. I don't think the SEC is as good this year. And Tennessee, is one of their top 25 teams. They looked terrible yesterday against Austin P. That game was a slugfest, and they were getting a real challenge by Austin P for a good, 2.5 quarters. That's concerning. Uh, Ole Miss, struggling with Tulane, who didn't have Michael Pratt. And Tulane played good, but Ole Miss, without Michael Pratt being there, Ole Miss should be able to win that game by a lot more than they did, but they couldn't. But they ended up winning, and the score might make you think they won by a lot, or they dominated that game, but they didn't. I watched that game from, the beginning to end. Tulane was in that game. It was just a few plays at the end that kind of added to the separation in the scoreboard, but that game was close. So the SEC, I'm not very high on them right now, and LSU, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Miss State, all these other teams, all of them have a lot of work to do. And I do think these schools will get better, but as we've seen right now, that Georgia looks like the best team, but also Georgia hasn't played anybody, and they don't play anybody that great really all season. So we kind of don't know how good Georgia's going to be. But they've won the last 2 national championships, so you kind of have to give them the benefit of the doubt and just trust that they'll be fine. But the rest of the SEC has been down, so I'm interested to see how the SEC rebounds. I kind of like it as a college football fan, though, just because it gets kind of boring seeing the same teams and the same conferences dominate. I like to see the Pac-12 kind of having a resurgence before it splits up. And the ACC's been, all right, at least at the top it has been. The Big Ten hasn't looked great. The Big 12 hasn't looked great. But it's early, so a lot of these teams aren't at their best and aren't at full strength and aren't playing the way they will be playing at the end of the season. So I want to acknowledge that. But yeah, I just think it's cool to see the Pac-12 and what they've done here at the beginning of the season and all these major wins. Caleb Williams and USC, let's talk about them next. They looked amazing. They went out there. It was 49-3 at half, and then they pulled their starters, and in the second half they kind of took it slow. But the way USC's offense looks, again, I'm concerned still about the defense and them up front because they haven't played a team that can really challenge it yet. When they do play, Colorado, they play in a few weeks. When they play them, when they play a Notre Dame, when they play in Oregon on the road later in the year, Washington, these teams that have great passing attacks, these teams that are physical up front, can they hold up against that? I don't have any concerns about their offense. I think they're going to be able to score against anybody because Caleb, no matter who you're playing, Caleb's going to give you a shot. But their defense, I think they're going to be susceptible to shootouts. That is what I'm concerned about. They've improved each and every week. So I don't want to not acknowledge that. They've improved each and every week. And they played, Stanford and San Jose State are about the same, but, they look clearly so much more improved from the San Jose State game to yesterday's game. They shut down Stanford for most of that first half. Second half, Stanford gained a lot of garbage time yards, but USC's defense was locked in, and they were getting off the field. And at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, just getting off the field without allowing scores. They did that. So I want to see that with USC, but overall, they look pretty dominant, and so you got to be impressed with them. They would be in my top 5 right now, and I think it'll be interesting to see them when they play some tougher competition.